Lovegrove for our Sunday runs was great, and we'd run from uni as well. I used to love destroying him on Eyre Street Hill. Little did he know, Eyre Street, you'll know Eyre Street. So we used to do this 10-mile circuit, and we were cutting it out in about an hour or just under. Well, he used to come and said, I ran 58. So one day we just hammered it. We did about 52, 53 minutes around this 10-mile circuit. And he took off from the beginning, and I caught him at the bottom of Eyre Street and just really tried to hammer it up Eyre Street, really to destroy him psychologically more than anything, because by the time I got to the top of Eyre Street, I was also knackered, but it had done its job.
Let him know.
Pardon?
He wouldn't know.
Oh, no, because he couldn't see me. That's right. That was enough, though. But, yeah, so it was consistency of mileage that year. So, you know, as a 20-year-old, I turned 20 on the day of the Auckland Cross Country Champs. It was my first year as a senior. So I had the winter, my first senior was the winter of 77. The summer of 77, 76, 77, I was still a junior, but ran mainly seniors because there was no challenge for me anymore in the junior ranks. I look back and I apply what I learned from a number of coaches I've been associated with. And really I was associated with 4 coaches, Keith. There was obviously Jack Ralston, who probably played the longest part. Frank there for those from when I was sort of probably around 17, 18, for those couple of years when I did do those good times. But I look back and I did quite a bit of speed work under Frank. I was with Arthur Lydiard for 6 months because Jack had gone overseas. And then when I stopped running, and after the initial illness, I came back and Arch Jelley took up with Arch Jelley for about 3 years. So that was good. Arch was an excellent coach, except he liked, part of his hill running was to run up the Waitack, that hill, do that multiple times from that little bridge up to the top of Scenic Drive, which was just over 2 miles. I'm sure you've run up that hill a few times yourself.
Many times, yes.
Yeah. So and all the coaches that I had, obviously Arthur, the principles were based on Lydiard's training, that base work training. And in fact, the base work training made you very strong. And I'm convinced now that 80% of your performance, or maybe even more, comes from that base work. You've got to be very careful with the effort work. Anything that really is effort, you've got to think carefully about what is that session going to achieve. So as a coach now, I've looked back and saying, what is this session going to do for the athlete? Where is this? And the session that you're doing has to be located within a parameter, a wider framework of the overall training regime in terms of time. You know, how far out is it from races, etc. So the winter of 77, I was just on fire. You know, first 19-year-old, first race of the season, up against Manurewa cross country, first senior race, up against the likes of Kevin Ryan. And I dealt to Kevin Ryan in my first race. He just couldn't get rid of me. And it wasn't a course that suited me. The old Manurewa course had a big hill, winding hill in the middle of it. And muddy. So it didn't, but I was just, you know, I was just going so well then. So Kevin had just destroyed the field apart from me. And then he kept looking over his shoulder and went through the first lap. I think it was 2 or 3 laps, but I know going to the last lap, you know, up the last hill, he was still leading. I was just following. Then I just got, I feel quite good. So I just stretched it out a bit on this flat bit before we turned around, came back on this sort of road and then down the hill, and that was it. So, and beating Dave Searle, and all these guys were, you know, really good New Zealand runners, current New Zealand representatives. So obviously that transition over the seniors, people talk about transition from junior to senior, was nothing for me, really. I was just straight up into, though, I guess my times, and then that led to Pacific Conference Games trials at the end of the year, and very windy conditions, 13:48 at Mount Smart. Got picked for the Pacific Conference Games, and as you know, I was only New Zealand to medal twice behind the late Dave Fitzsimmons from South Australia, and the late, in the 1500, Graham Crouch, who was a stride ahead of me, the late Graham Crouch, because I said to Graham, not long before he died, I said, I remember that first race, because I didn't realise he was in the 5,000, because I think he finished fourth in the 5,000. I didn't know he even ran it. But in the 1500, Keith, in a slow run race, I think we ran the last lap about 53, 54. He put his arms up in the air just to go over the line, and it was a blanket finish, and the guy on the inside dipped him and beat him. So he had it, but the fighter would have shown his arms up in the air going across the line, but he got second. But fantastic bloke, you know. Yeah, so I did beat Dave Fitzsimmons and break Ron Clark's West Australian record a few days later on a satellite tour. So I knew that at that stage, I was going well. I was competing against world-class athletes and beating them, and I was 20 years old. Good run at the Nationals. I was probably not as well prepared as I was at Pacific Conference Games, but I was pretty good. I finished second to Rod Dixon, but Rod remembers the race because I discussed this with Rod. It was a slow run race, a good quality field, but of course the big Rod Dixon in the field, you know, everyone's just watching him, and then we were probably going along at 14, 15 pace, you know. And then Rod took the lead, really, with about 2 laps to go, and sort of started to split the field up. Then he put the hammer down with 4:50 to go and dropped everyone apart from me, because he called me, he said, this little bastard, he looked around, he said, this little guy, he said, I couldn't get rid of him. He said, and he kept looking around, and you know how he could wind up, Rod.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
He said he thought he would have dropped me down by the time we hit the back straight, but he said, I looked around coming into the home straight, and you had the audacity to try and take me in the home straight, you know, because I pulled up.
I watched that race. I was in the stands at Newtown Stadium. That was Wellington.
Yeah.
And you came up at him, and it was all he could do just to get ahead of you. You were like a bulldog.
I know. I just ran out of legs in the last 50 metres. So he remembered that. He said he thought he would have buried me, because we were travelling along quite quickly in that last lap. On the basis that that's where things started to unravel. It's interesting because Arthur came out to Mount Smart before I went to the Pacific Conference Games. He wanted me to do a time trial over 5K.
Yeah.
I did 13:58, I think. He said, "You're ready to go," and I always remember talking to Arthur, because we had a good chat before I went. And I remember two things he said. I said, oh, there's a pre-games warm-up meeting, Arthur. Do I run the 12? Because I was down to run 15 and 5. Do you want me to run the 1200? Because they're odd distances. Or the 3000, or 3000 is not an odd distance. He said, is there anything below 1200? And I said, oh, there's a 600, but that will be for the 800 runners. He said, run that. So I did. And I went to the first lap. I did a PB basically for 200 meters. I went through in 24:51. I was ahead of everyone apart. I went through 51 and I was near the back of the field. I came into the home straight. I was second to last. Graham Crouch passed me with about 40 to go. So I did about 120. He did about 119, something. So the guy that won it was incredible. He was really, really good. Anyway, so nominated for 78 games, but that's when the arthritis came on and I could hardly walk. So 78, couldn't do anything. Just let the selectors know that I was unavailable now. Or I was injured. But I had this swelling in my right foot. Now, I always thought, you remember Dick Taylor had a similar type of arthritic condition. So it was inflammation around in my foot. I don't know what it was from, because I did a whole lot of, I saw specialists after specialists. Just met I don't know, she's going to be my wife then, Sandra. So I just met her and I couldn't run. I couldn't run at all. So 78, I didn't run, the winter of 78. That's when I saw a number of specialists. I was told I would never run really at a high level again. I remember coming out of Auckland Hospital, after I'd seen another specialist, and I'd never really got to the bottom of what it was. But it also started now to affect my knees and ankles and caused through physical stress. So whether I trained too hard, I don't know. I never felt I know I did a bit of speed work, but no more than anyone else. So so I didn't run in 79 at all, and so that was it. 1980 made a bit of a comeback, and that's when Arch started coaching me. And Arch gave me a real strong belief that I could get back to a level where he was. So after the 80 season, it was up and down. I'd finished second in the university games to Andrew Stark over 800, and I'd won the 1500. But I was now struggling with a bowel issue where I was losing blood. So, that was another thing that came along. Little did I know that within my own family that my father and two of my sisters had suffered from the same kind of complaint, proctitis or colitis, I can't remember, of the bowel. I haven't had anything like that for decades now, but I had 79 out. I ran a bit in 80, but the long runs, Keith, were not causing me any angst. It was only effort runs, speed work, hill work, that type of stuff that was bringing on the colitis. Anything really stressing the body. 82, I started jogging again towards the end of 82. By this time, I'd put a couple of stone on. I was roughly about the weight I am now. I was feeling a lot better in 83, and I had a really enjoyable year because I lost the weight, but I didn't care where I finished. I got back into running, to races. I hadn't raced for years. I remember the first race I had was the Massey cross country. I was way down the field, like when I say way down the field, probably in about 17th place, the teens. And then so Arch said, that's good. And then I started running quite well, and not enough to be winning, but 83, and I was coping with the training, although now it was reduced. Then 84, Arch increased my training, and I was coping with that. And I beat John Bowden, the Auckland Cross Country Champs. 84, I had a bit of a turn in the summer of 84, and I had a bit of a scuffle with Pallone, bit of an argument with him. And I ran the track season. I ran the nationals, but I ran the senior men's 1500. I think I finished about 7th or 8th in the final, because I'd run the 5,000 Auckland Champs, but because I was going through some medical issues, the only reason I put myself through it was to beat Pallone after we had a huge argument. After that, when the selectors said to me, "What race do you want to run?" I said, "Not the 5,000 meters." So 84 was a reasonable year, and then Arch said to me, "If you're capable, Geoff, of breaking the world record." This came from Arch. "You could break the world record for 10,000 meters." I'd never run a 10,000 meters. The world record, I think, was 27:30 that stage. So I'd never thought about that. So I guess he saw potential in me. He said, within 2.5 years, you could do that if, things go well. But I never saw, he said, you're as talented, if not more talented, than Dick Taylor. And, and like Dick Taylor was a sort of a hero, so he said, if you can get back to that level, 10,000 meters will be your sort of distance. And then, so that was 84. I had a great season at 85, as you know, ran 30:32, finished second at Zatopek on my first real 10,000 meters. But went to World Cross in 86, and really that was the end. Then I did get injured, my Achilles tendon, which eventually I got an operation on. But if I'd have known more back then, I would have had the operation on my Achilles straight away, maybe extended my career. I've never had a problem there since. So I sort of had 86, came back from World Cross Country. I struggled to run any races. I could train any races. Well, I could hardly walk for 2 or 3 days. But what really finished me off was a guy called, you'll know him. His surname was Benton. He ran a bit of road. He was a solid club. He ran about 30 minutes for 10K.
I've heard of a guy called Benton who was a road runner.
Yeah. I ran the Waitemata 10K.
Yeah.
And I ran 30 minutes 20, and he ran 30 minutes 10. But I just felt I couldn't run any faster. I gave it away at that stage, and the Achilles was just chronic until I had the operation. So my 20s, really from 19, beginning of 78, when I pushed Dixon, from 78 to when I finished probably at the end of 86, at least half of that time, about half that time, I wasn't running. Of course, one of your questions, there's a lot of unrealized potential. But looking back now, Keith, I'm not the only one suffered that. I was never mentally burnt out. I love running. But I just wonder whether some of the training I did when I was maybe 18 or 19 had an effect especially the speed work, on my longevity. Because I felt I never trained hard until I got really under Frank's guidance. So, yeah, probably till 75, my last year at school, when I started to do a bit more work, particularly in the speed work area. So, and obviously the thing that speed work taught me, you can come up very quickly. You know, it can bring you on really quickly. My times at 18 were right up there with the best in the world, you know, for under 20 athletes. I think my 5K time was maybe the first in the world. This is before Africans really took running seriously. And my 1500 meter time, I know, would have ranked third in Europe in the under 20s. Finnish guy was the top guy. I ran against him actually.
Panoman.
Yeah, that's him.
Ari Panoman.
Yeah. I ran against him in the track series at the beginning of 78. Yeah, so I think he ran a sub 340 as a junior.
He beat Co, I think.
Yeah. So he was in New Zealand for the track series. I was fifth in the 1500. I think he was third. I might have been fourth actually. It was Coughlin, Walker. Walker got beaten, I think, by Coughlin, Christchurch. Then the Finn opponent, and then I think myself. So I remember that race because basically I led into the bell lap. But yeah, would I have done things differently? I look back, I probably wouldn't have done the hard speed work. And also, Frank, for some reason, Frank got me to run a marathon in October of 1975. I was still at school. So I ran the Hamilton Marathon in 2 hours 31 as a junior. You know, it was meant to be a training run, but running 2.5 hours is hardly a training run. I regret not doing 2 events to more. Maybe I should have explored the steeplechase a little bit more and the 10,000 meters a little bit more. I never had a great desire to run marathons. That's it. So training was very much lead based with a small diversion but there'd always be that periodization of base work for 12 weeks, hill work. So you'd always work backwards from where you wanted to peak. And the peak was sort of like, you could hold your peak sort of for a month or so. That was the idea. So during that month, you'd have racing. So obviously in the hill work phase and the harder speed work phase, you'd still be going to Mount Smart and doing races on a Saturday or whatever. But maybe from February, you'd be peaking, you know, February through to nationals sort of thing, that area there. So that's where you're in the track season aiming to peak. So almost mid-January to sort of early part of March, that's when the big race season was. And that's when I did all my best times during that. There are some races, Keith, I have a very sort of photographic memory, being a history teacher. Also, I know exactly how I felt during some races. Some races I could hardly tell you what I felt like. But I remember that junior 1500 meters. That's one race.
Dennis Greg Banks in Auckland.
Yeah, I remember it so well and how I felt during the whole race. Because prior to that race, Greg had been running well. He got down to 3:47, which was then just outside the national junior record. So, you know, Greg had a great kick on him. So the idea, Frank, we planned the race to run the first lap in sort of 58 to 60. You know, rounds. We aim to run the first lap in 60 seconds. We aim to get to the halfway mark in close to 2 minutes as we could. Then the third lap, we wanted to put in an effort, you know, to make it, to break Greg Banks at that stage. And then just to hold on. and it sort of almost, well, it did pay off, but I went too fast, and I felt so slow in the first lap when Keith, I felt I'm going so slow, and because I felt nothing in my legs. I wasn't even breathing hard. 58, right? Gee, that felt easy. I know how I felt. Even I felt I wasn't even breathing. Nothing. Half mile, 158, right? So I was right on or above the schedule. So then I followed the plan. Then I put an effort in on the third lap, which I did in 60. So I got to 3 laps in 2:58. And when I got into the last lap, I still felt pretty good with a lap to go. From 300 to go to 200 to go, suddenly I could feel it. I started to feel it in my legs. And the last 200, all the training and some of the training I'd done about relaxation, I applied in the race. My mind was fine, but the body wasn't, because Greg has told me this on at least 2 occasions. He said I don't know if he saw that race. He probably didn't in 76.
Yeah, I saw it, yeah.
Greg said to me, like he was sure he was going to catch me he said, he said, he pulled me back. He said, in the home straight, he said, I knew I was going to catch you. He said, then 50 minutes ago, you kicked again. And I don't know if I did or didn't, but he said to me, you seem to kick again. I think that came down to maybe just trying to hold my form and relax my hands. And yeah, so I mean, there's only 0.2 of a second between us in the end, but Greg remembers that. I mean, I didn't know what I looked like from behind, but obviously he was catching me at a pretty quick rate. So yeah, so, and when I ran the 13:48 as a junior in late January, it was effortless. And when I ran the 13:32, which should have been, it's interesting because that race was set up and organised by the Auckland Centre, had a race referee, everything was organised to make it legitimate. Ken Maloney took me through, was going to pace me for the first 4 laps or 5 laps. He took me through, and I wanted 65s. I'd never run that fast, but he took me through in 68. I've got the lap splits here, which I got off the electronic thing, with 67.91. Then he did the next lap, 63.07. And he said to me, we're back on track. Then third lap, 64.75. Listen to how consistent this is. Then 65.15, 65.39, 65.7, 64.91, 66.31. That was the 8th lap. 65.16, 65.21. See how consistent those laps were. 11th lap, 64.32, 63.32, then 31 for the last. And all that was no speed work. That was just distance. That was just, I only freshened up for that for 2 days before. I didn't do any from Wednesday onwards. I did that on a Friday evening. And I just did a jog on the Thursday and a jog on the Wednesday, an hour run. I was still in build-up phase, but we thought we'd give it a shot. That was 85.
85.
If I'd have stayed healthy, I'm sure I could have gone well under 13:20. I don't know what I'd done for 10K, but I know I could have done under 13:20 given right conditions, right race, all those sort of things. I mean,
and you were one of those guys who was a racer. Some people are
yeah.
very good time trialers and go to pieces in a race, but you were a guy who could pull it out, pull out all the stops. Yeah.
I look back. I had to do analysis of I don't know how many records I've actually set. I can't tell you, Keith, how many I broke at club level. I know the only time I did a tally was when Frank did a tally when I was my last year at school, finished, and I've broken 60 records at club, national, provincial levels since.
16?
Pardon?
16? 60.
Yeah, 660. In
Goodness.
fact, I know that was from 100 meters up though. That was at club. That was at Calliope. I was setting records over every track distance basically. So, and when you say I was a racer, I looked at how many New Zealand titles I'd won. It was exceeded 20 altogether. You know, junior and although I only won one senior title, you know, individual title over the road race. The number of was like 21 gold, 1 silver and 2 bronze. So when I tended to race, I tended to win. Yeah, so looking back, like that 1332 I just described, when I finished, I could have, within 10 minutes, I was all fresh again, you know? So, and that, to me, I learned a big, not from the time, but the type of training I did up to that point to achieve that time was all just Lydiard type training, you know, the long runs, the fartlek type work. There's no speed work involved at this point. Leading up to that 3K, I just went and did a time trial, 8:09, and a week later, 8:10, just up at Shaw Bay, just by myself, with Jack holding the watch. So I broke 2 minutes for the 800, and 1973 was the first one. And, you know, looking back, January 76, see, 3:48 for 1500. Then in Feb, 3:44.1. So 2,000 meters. December 76, I was still a junior, 5:15, you know, for 2,000 meters. That was down at Gisborne. So it was handy now keeping all these stats, you know. As a junior, I did a 10,000 meters up at Warkworth on the school track in 30 minutes 55. So, yeah. So anyway, that's a long time ago now. See, I only ran 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steeplechases in my whole life. 6, 7. And only 3 of those with 3,000, the others with 2,000. So no 10 mile road race. Now we raced, I think I might have put it, I wonder if I've got it here. I'll see if I've got the road race here. Because that was 1980, if I just don't, 1980. Was that down at Whakatane, wasn't it?
Yep.
Don't know if I've got it here, actually. I should. I went down with a guy, here we go, 1980. October, I've got my time there. I've got in brackets 16K, 49:20. So you must have been better than that. What did you do that day? You
49:13.
Okay. So I was 49:20. Yeah. So you must have been pretty close to a medal, though.
I'd say so, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember.
It closed very fast, yeah.
Yeah, you came past me. I remember you coming past me. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was possibly the fastest 800 I've ever run. That last 800, you know. So I was flying.
You were flying.
One of those days it all comes together, you know.
Yeah, well, you have those odd days. I mean, I remember that race, and just the last couple of K, I knew I wasn't going to be in the first three. I didn't. I just buttoned off. I wasn't pushing myself to the limit, put it that way. I got a bit of a shock, though, to be honest with you, when you came past me.
I got a shock going past you.
Yeah, because I thought,
I didn't expect
I knew who you were. That's Keith Livingston. Shit, I must be. Sorry, no disrespect to you. I said, I must be running slow. But you were running really fast. You passed me. I mean, you say you were running really quickly. You did pass me very, very quickly. And I did try and pick it up slightly when you went past me because I was going to let you beat me. See, that's the first time I've ever said that to anyone. But then you were just going too quick, and I thought, no, just let him go. So I don't know. You would have passed me probably with less than a K to go, because if you put 7 seconds on me, that's quite that's 50 meters just about. So you put 50 meters on me pretty quickly.
Yeah. And I was going for it.